Are you thinking of selling your home, but you're not really sure where to start, who to talk to, what steps there are along the way, and what you should be looking out for? If you're in that situation, you're going to want to stick around. My name is Ryan Gillard with Real Broker, your Calgary realtor, and this video is all about the step-by-step guide to list your property, to maximize your return, and have the transaction go as smoothly as possible. And if you're out there watching this video and you could use some help selling your home, feel free to reach out to me. I'm easy to get a hold of. You can call, text, email, or comment, and even check out my website. All right, let's get right into it. All right, so the first point here is this is just early on in the process. You'll want to figure out, why do you want to sell? Is it currently worth it? And what's happening with the current market conditions? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? What are similar homes selling for? How long is it taking? Now, when I meet with sellers, I'll go over all of this with them, but it's still good to do your own homework just to kind of start out with the process here. And point number 2, you'll want to pull the title. Now, if you don't know how to pull the title, you let me know, I can help you out there. But the title is kind of like your ID for home ownership, and there could be some issues on the title. So in our purchase contracts in Alberta, there's a clause in there saying that the buyer will inherit a clean title. So all the stuff that you might have on there has to come off the title for you to sell the property. And there can be issues. I just had one maybe half a year ago where there was a lien on her title for like $50,000 that had to be paid off from the sale proceeds. She was behind on her condo fees, so there's a lien on the title for that as well, and she owed money to the Canada Revenue Agency. So that all those things had to be taken off the title for the property to sell, and the money was very tight. So if you're in that situation, you want to know what exactly is on there and what's it going to take to pay off everything if there are some issues like that on title. So it can be very important to pull this. And if you do this too late, like say for example that you sold your property, the buyer waived all the conditions, and then you figured out, oh shoot, I have all these things in the title, I can't really sell it. Then you could be into a lawsuit. And it's also the realtor's job to pull the title as well to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. But it's just very important that you want to pull your title early on in the process to identify any kind of issues that might pop up. Point number 3 is you want to check if there's a bank payout penalty and how much it is. So this is the penalty if you sell your property before the mortgage term is up. And quite common, it's like 3 months of interest. Other times it can be huge. So every lender is different, so I can't give you an exact number. And it can prevent some sales from happening. Right now in Calgary, there's a lot of equity, so it's not as big of a problem. But in our recession years from like 2015 to 2020, there wasn't much equity. When you factor in like the real estate fees, then add in a big bank payout penalty, it can actually prevent some sales from happening. And that happened to me quite often back in those years. I'd meet people that wanted to sell, and they couldn't because of the numbers just didn't work out. So it's one thing that you'll want to check on like early on in the process, because you don't want to be selling your property, have a firm sale, and then figure out that you can't actually sell it because of the bank payout penalty. That will get you into a lawsuit, and that's not much fun. All right, and point number 4, you'll want to prepare the home for sale. So at this point, you've committed to selling it. Now it's time to get the home ready for sale. Sometimes sellers will ask me to come over to give them some ideas of what they can do to get it ready for sale, but it's usually common sense stuff like cleaning, decluttering, staging, getting it ready for photos, junk removal, getting the landscaping all done. You might want to paint, just stuff like that. I've got a more detailed video specifically on this topic, which you can find right here. And point number 5, we're at the stage where the seller is interviewing agents for the job of selling the home. And not all agents are built equally, so you're going to want to do some homework and maybe interview a few agents just to make sure you select the right one. And I just made a video about this week, about what questions should a seller be asking a listing agent so they don't waste their time and they hire the right one. And so there are a bunch of questions. I've got them printed off right here, just a few of them, and I'll just rattle them off. So how to prepare your home for sale, we just talked about this earlier. How long will the listing appointment take? You don't want to take 2 hours. It could be very brief. Do you work full-time? There are lots of part-time agents, or would you prefer a full-time agent? What are the costs involved in selling? That's a big one. And I've also got another video specifically on the cost of real estate, which you can find right here. Do you normally handle buyers or sellers? Some agents just do like 95% buyers, and some do 95% sellers, and some are an equal mix. So you're going to want to find someone that has the right fit for you. Have you sold homes in this area, or are you familiar with the area? Calgary is a huge area, and if someone primarily works just in the southeast and your home is in the deep northwest, maybe that's not the right fit for you. How long have you been a realtor? Another good question to ask. How many homes have you sold this year? How many listings do you currently have? How many of your listings have expired in the past year? Like, our market is red hot, and if a bunch of their listings are expiring, maybe that's not the right fit for you. What is the average days on the market for homes to sell in Calgary? That's a good stat. Any agent should know this number. What is the average list to sales price ratio in the city? Gives you an idea of where your list price is and where your sales price should be. And what is your communication like? The biggest gripe in real estate is someone hires a listing agent and they vanish. They never hear from them. Like, they're like secret agents. So that's the biggest gripe in real estate. So you want to find someone that's communicating to you how you prefer. And then lastly, you want to go over all the marketing. So what kind of marketing do you do? Are you part of a team? Do you do open houses? Stuff along those lines. There's a long laundry list, and a link to this video that I made about the question that you should ask, you can find right here. Okay, next up, so you've met with some real estate agents and you've selected one. Now is the time to sign a listing contract to get the home ready for sale. And I've got the contract pulled up here. I'm not going to go through it line by line, but I'll just summarize the main points of it. So the first page here, we have the address. Sorry, we have the brokerage, the seller, the address over here, the price, the proposed possession date over here, the agent that you've hired will be over here, the start time of the contract and the end time. If we go over the end time, it's an expired listing. And I'll just skip forward here. So your responsibilities. You'll want to, this is just kind of generic stuff, that you have the right to sell the property, the land and the buildings are currently being used according to municipal bylaws, stuff like that. Dower consent. So dower is if you have a married couple but only one party is on title, then the non-titled spouse has to sign off on it. So that's the dower section. Conflicts of interest. This could be if I'm the listing agent, I could show the property, no problem, but if that buyer also wants me to represent them at the same time, we call that double ending it. And I have to follow the right protocol and make sure everyone's okay with it. But there could be some conflicts of interest that pop up during a real estate transaction. It's not necessarily a bad thing if an agent double ends a property, but it could be a conflict of interest depending on how it's handled. This section is where the commission would go. So the total commission would be over here. Then what we're offering the buyer's agent in that section over here. And I won't cover this in depth in this video, but that's just basically where the commission goes. Your personal confidential information. I keep it all confidential. I don't share your information with anybody else, unless like my office needs stuff. But that's common sense. I'll skip over some of this stuff. Property information, notices and permits. Are you aware of any material latent defects in the property? So this is like if you know of a defect that's easily hidden, that's dangerous, that's a material latent defect. Any other defects that you know about? Have you received any government or local authority notices? This could be like they're paving the back alley and they want every seller has to chip in a certain amount, stuff like that. Do you know of any lack of permits? So you have to answer yes or no to these questions. Additional terms here. Early end to this agreement, generally if we sell the property, if the company goes bankrupt, or if we agree to it in writing, we can end the contract. I'll skip over this here. Seller acknowledged. I'll skip over that. Just contact information. So pretty generic. Just a quick rundown of a listing contract. And I've also pulled up a purchase contract just because I want to show you the condo documents that you might want to gather as a seller. So where are we here? So yeah. So in a contract, if you're selling a condo, almost all condos come with the condition that the buyer wants to analyze all of the condo documents. So in the purchase contract, they will say, I want the documents before such and such a time. And they don't really give you that much time quite often, but it can take a while to get condo documents. So it becomes very stressful for the seller. So what I would recommend, as soon as you list the property, I would order most of the condo documents like right away. And there's a huge list of them, and it might cost you, say, $200 to $300 to get all of the condo documents, depending on each management company. So they will want, so the documents include, I won't cover every one of these, but management agreement, recreational agreement, are there post-tension cables, the financials, all the financials like the budget, stuff like that, annual financial statements, all the bylaws, annual general meeting minutes, monthly meeting minutes, the information statement, like if there are any lawsuits, any structural deficiencies, stuff like that. What else do we have here? You get the idea. There's a long list of condo documents that the seller will most likely have to provide for the buyer. And you'll want to do it right away because these management companies can take a while. and the buyer might not give you that much time for the condition. So it becomes very stressful. So I would order them right away. And that's just a good quick rundown of the listing contract and some of the condo documents that you'll want to order right away. And one thing I forgot to mention during the listing contract overview is on the first page, there's a section for inclusions and exclusions. So inclusions are like fridge, stove, dishwasher, washer, dryer, stuff like that. Exclusions, you have to be careful here because if something is fixed to the structure, it's assumed that it's staying with the property. So if you have like a fancy chandelier or drapes that you want to keep, you'll want to specifically note that in the contract that it's excluded. And point number 6, let's talk about, which we actually touched on this during the listing contract overview, is the RPR, the real property report, and condo documents. So the RPR is a legal document. It's a land survey, so it'll show the structure with the house, and it'll have stuff like easements, right-of-ways, and it's stamped for compliance by the city, just showing that everything complies with the city, basically. And why this is important is in the purchase contract, there's terminology that says the buyer will get an RPR stamped by the city for its compliance. And this document costs about $700. And sometimes there are issues, like if the garage is on top of a utility right-of-way, that's going to cause an issue. Or if the fence is built 5 feet into city land, the buyer will want to know that. So I'd recommend actually getting the RPR right early on in the process. As soon as you list the property, I would pay like the $700 and I'd get a new RPR just so that you have it handy. And if there are issues, it gives you some time to deal with them as well. And same thing with condo documents. I already touched on it. Is they take a while to gather and it costs maybe $200 or so. And I just have them ready because almost all condo purchase contracts include a condo document condition. And point number 7, let's talk about some marketing now. And the best marketing that you can do is regarding the price. So when pricing the property, you want to open the market versus narrowing it. So having the right price is critical. It solves almost every issue in real estate is solved by price. And I bet you if you had 2 identical properties, one is listed at $450,000 at the right price, and say they just have a few photos, it's not marketed all that well, and one is at say $525 because the seller wants to leave room to negotiate, but say they have excellent marketing at $525. I still bet you that the one at $450 will sell faster and for more money than the one at like $525. So the price is critical, and if you want to have a good real estate experience, you have to nail the price. And point number 8, photos and measurements and the eye guide, which is like a virtual walkthrough. You'll want to have the home show like fantastic for the photos. It sounds obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I'll show up there with the photographer and the home is still a work in progress. Like it makes you kind of scratch your head, but obviously have it showing as best as you possibly can for photos, and it will make a big difference. Okay, so we have like the right price, we've got excellent photos. Other things that you can do are maybe open houses. They're a bit old-fashioned, but I think during the very first weekend, an open house can be a good idea. You can run Google ads, that's becoming more popular. I also do Facebook and Instagram boosts where I'll boost the listing on social media. You can get like thousands of views doing this, so it adds extra exposure. You can do what I'm doing right now. You can do YouTube videos, like I do both shorts, like a quick less than 1 minute video of the property. I also do community tours and include those listings in the community tour. Just stuff like that. There's all sorts of ways that you can market the property. So the next point here is showings. So we have the right price, we've got some good marketing, and now buyers are coming to view the property. The best practice here is for the seller to leave the property during the showing. If you're there, the buyer doesn't relax and it can hurt your chances of selling. If you have a tenant-occupied property, you have to give them 24 hours notice, but try your hardest to get them to leave the property as well. Easier said than done sometimes, but the buyer also won't relax as much if the tenant is home. And sometimes the tenant can say some things that the seller doesn't want them to say as well. So you want to get them out of there if possible. You'll also want to have a lockbox out front to make it easy to view the property. And I would also have a sign out front. There are some sellers who hate the sign out front. They don't want their neighbors to know they're selling. But you should think differently because I have sold properties where the neighbors saw the sign and one of their friends bought the property or something along those lines. So it does add additional exposure, and you never know. You might get lucky and sell your property simply because there was a sign out front. And the next point is negotiation. So enough buyers have viewed the property and now an offer has come in. Maybe there are multiple offers. So there are 3 things that can happen basically. In our market right now, it is red hot. So there's tons of competing offers, multiple offers. If you're lucky enough to get an unconditional offer, congratulations, your home is sold. Like it's as easy as that. I wouldn't celebrate until you get the deposit, though. Our market is a bit weird right now where buyers are scrambling to get into properties and they're changing their mind like the next day. So it kind of sucks for that reason, being in a red hot market. But if you have an unconditional offer, I would keep it active until you receive the deposit, and then you can mark it sold. But more commonly, you'll probably get an offer that you have to counter back. So there's some negotiations. It could be like the price, possession, the deposit amount, the condition timelines, or the conditions themselves. There could be a financing condition, a home inspection, condo documents are the three common ones. It might be a condition the buyer sells their property. So there are conditions and there are terms. There could be a term in the contract where the seller has to repair like the furnace, or maybe do like a duct cleaning or a fireplace cleaning or a professional cleaning, stuff like that. So there are conditions and there are terms that are negotiated back and forth between the buyer and the seller. And the last thing that you can do, you can just simply reject an offer if it's not good enough in your eyes. So in a nutshell, that's the negotiation period. And I would say on average, if it's a conditional offer, I would say 10 business days is a common timeline. The home inspection itself only takes like 2 to 3 hours, but the banks take a long time to get you a final approval on the property. So that might take 10 business days for that process to play out. There's not much the seller can do during this process, besides keep showing the property and round up all the condo documents if you haven't already. Other than that, it's a bit of a waiting game during this pending process. Okay, so we're still in the conditional phase. The buyer is doing their due diligence regarding their conditions they have in the offer. And once they are okay with everything, like say they're okay with the financing or the home inspection or whatever condition they have, the next step for them is to sign a waiver saying that they're satisfied with the conditions. Once this waiver is sent to the seller, the home is officially sold. So this is when like the sold sticker goes up, it comes off of the MLS system, and the property is officially sold. And if the buyer backs out at this point, they lose their deposit. In 10 years, I've only had one buyer back out during this process right here. So it's very rare. So most of the time you can consider your property sold once you have received that waiver. Okay, so we have the waiver, the property is officially sold. The next step is for both buyer and seller to select their own lawyers to help finalize the transaction. So the lawyer's job in this is they help to change legal ownership. That's an easy way to look at it. So they're dealing with land titles, they're dealing with the lenders to get the money, and they're looking over all of the paperwork. So that's kind of the legal process. I'd say on average it's about $1,500 to hire a lawyer. And again, both buyer and seller both hire their own lawyer. And I would say that the seller should be in to see the lawyer at least a few weeks before closing. And that's basically the legal process summarized. There are other things that lawyers do, like they help adjust like property taxes, condo fees, and stuff like that. Like for example, if you paid all the taxes at the very start of the year, but you sold it halfway through the year, then that seller should get a reimbursement back for the property taxes they paid. They calculate condo fees, what's been paid to the day. So they just do like adjustments like that as well. All right, so we've been in to see the lawyer, and the last step now is the possession. So in our contracts, it's very common to see a term in there saying the buyer is allowed to do a pre-possession walkthrough 24 hours prior to possession. And what they're doing at this walkthrough is just to make sure everything is in the same condition, basically. There's no fires or floods since they last saw the property. There's no major damage, stuff like that. They'll also be checking to see if all the inclusions are still there, like the washer, dryer, dishwasher, stuff like that. And they'll also make sure, like if there was a term in the contract for like professional cleaning or any kind of repair work, now is the time for the buyer to verify that's been done. So it's stuff along those lines. And the actual possession itself. So on possession day, what happens is the buyer's side sends the money to the seller's side. And as soon as the seller has the money, or the seller's lawyer has the money, then keys are officially releasable and the property is sold. And that's the end of the transaction. Well, that's my rundown of the selling process. Thank you so much for watching. Now, I'd love to help you out. If you're watching this and you could use some help, I'm easy to get a hold of. You can call, text, email, comment, even check out my website. I'm more than happy to help you out. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.